To clarify, I don't think that everything from black conservatism is wrong, but the whole, or the core possibly at least, there is something wrong with black conservatism. And to understand what I mean, I'm going to look at Gothix's video looking at the movie UT2, Uncle Tom 2.
So, in
So, in
case
case
you're
you're
kind of
kind of
clueless to
clueless
what
to
I'm
what I'm
talking
talking
about,
about,
Uncle
Uncle
Tom
Tom
Part
Part
1, which
1,
by
which
the way
by the
you
way
can
you can
watch for
watch for
free if you
free
go
if you go
to
to
uncletom.com,
uncletom.com,
and
and
that
that
movie
movie
covers
covers
the
the
history
history
and the
and the
true
true
story
story
of the
of the
black
black
conservatives
conservatives
in
in
America.
America.
Now,
Now,
Uncle
Uncle
Tom
Tom
2.
2.
Now, this was done by black conservatives, so I don't know how truthful it's gonna be, but we'll see. We'll see.
On the
On
other
the other
hand,
hand,
this
this
dives a
dives a
little
little
bit
bit
more
more
deep
deep
into
into
communism, and I'm
communism,
just
and I'm
going to
just going to
read
read
you
you
a brief
a brief
summary of
summary of
what
what
this
this
film was
film was
about.
about.
So it
So
says
it
that
says that
Uncle
Uncle
Tom
Tom
is an
is an
odyssey
odyssey
depicting a
depicting a
gradual
gradual
demoralization of
demoralization of
America through
America through
Marxist
Marxist
infiltration of
infiltration
its
of its
institutions.
institutions.
This film
This film
explores how
explores
this
how this
deceptive
deceptive
ideology has
ideology
torn
has torn
apart the
apart the
fabric of
fabric of
society
society
while
while
using
using
Black
Black
America as
America
its
as
number
its
one
number
tool
one
for
tool
its
for its
destruction.
destruction.
Okay?
Okay?
So, the problem with that is that it depends on what we mean by Marxism. Are you talking about the actual Marxism, the ideals of Marx, Karl Marx, socialism, then communism, and was like, nay, 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 I'm gonna do worse than you in a sense. I got, oh boy. Or we talk about cultural Marxism, which is origins is anti-Semitic and really doesn't make any sense. An economic theory or critique of another economic theory can't really be a cultural thing. So that's just not how that works, guys. So we'll see. I have my
Some
doubts.
Clips that
clips
I'm
that
going
I'm
to
going to
get
get
through,
through,
and I
and I
just want to
just want to
preface by
preface by
saying
saying
when we're
when we're
talking
talking
about
about
communism
communism
and
and
Marxism,
Marxism,
for those
for
that have
those that
been
have
on
been
my
on my
channel for
channel
a
for
very
a very
long
long
time,
time,
you've
you've
sort of
sort of
watched this
watched this
channel go
channel
through an
go through an
evolution. And
evolution, and
recently,
recently
I've been
I've
sort
been
of
sort of
diving into
diving
the
into the
topics
topics
of
of
Christianity.
Christianity.
And
And
there's a lot
there's
of
a lot of
people
people
that
that
don't
don't
see the
see the
correlation to
correlation
what I
to what I
have been
have been
talking
talking
about
about
to me
to me
talking
talking
about
about
religion. We
religion. We
can't
can't
talk
talk
about
about
Marxism and
Marxism and
communism
communism
unless we
unless we
talk about
talk about
religion. That
religion.
is
That
a
is a
huge part
huge
of the
part of the
conversation.
conversation.
In a sense of a way, yes, because I think Karl Marx did say himself, religion is the opiate of the masses, but to steelman it, from what I remember, basically socialists, Marxists, and communists seem to say that religion itself isn't necessarily bad, but it could be used by the bourgeoisie and capitalism to sort of enslave you in a sense, to kind of say everything's alright even though everything is not alright. The problem with that is that they go way too far with it, and we have seen with communist dictatorships, especially now in China, that they don't like churches that much. They don't like Christianity that much, because for some, especially with the woman caught in adultery scene in the Gospel of John, that was kind of going against authority, and of course the Communist government of China does not want that, so they literally created their own version of the Bible that literally lets Jesus stone the woman, basically like, no, following the rules is great, guys. It's great. Following the rules is great. Don't rebel. Don't rebel. So, in a sense, yes, he has a point, but I think what most black conservatives would do, and just conservatives in general, they go way too far with it, and they have a cultural Marxism, which again, its roots is based on anti-Semitism. So it's not good, not really good at all. If you didn't know that, now you do. It's not good. It's not good. It's not necessarily a good term to use. You can use other terms.
So when
So
it
when
gets
it gets
down
down
to
to
understanding
understanding
how
how
our
our
society is
society is
crumbling,
crumbling,
we're missing a big chunk of the puzzle if we totally avoid talking about God.
In a sense, yes, to an extent, but it just depends.
A lot of things in this movie that is very unsettling, and it's going to upset a lot of people. In fact, when I was at the theater, a few people actually walked out. And all I can say, because again, I want you to go and support this company, I want you to buy the film, but all I can say is that there is a build-up in this documentary to get you to a certain point, and that point being that for the most part, everything we were taught.
Now, it depends on what you mean by it might have been a lie. It's possible that we might have not seen the full thing, but calling it a lie might not be the best. It's most likely not true. And I think, from what I know, mainly the reason why black conservatives were kind of like the black sheep in a sense of way of the black community is mainly because, if you don't know, especially in the South, a lot of people are told to vote blue no matter who. And the reason why, actually, if I'm correct, is because there was some sense of betrayal of the Republican Party, and especially now, regarding their views of race and things of that nature. Because theoretically, they can win a lot of the Mexican vote if they just don't dehumanize them, and sort of ignoring the obviousness, if you will, of maybe not even systemic racism, but at least the effects of what I think even a lot of black conservatives would be called systemic racism, like the blatant things like Jim Crow and segregation and slavery, and possibly even redlining. I think it depends on the black conservative, but the point I was trying to make is that since there seems to be, especially in the South at least, there's been an ancestral push to just vote Democrat, even if you don't like a lot of their cultural positions, because most black Democrats, especially in the South at least, are quite conservative Democrats, actually. If you didn't know, now you know, guys. Not a monolith here. And so, for black conservatives, they're kind of like the sort of crazy uncle, no pun or possibly pun intended, in the Thanksgiving dinner, talking about how MLK was actually bad or something, that sort of stereotype, which is why a lot of them are called UTs. Which I don't think most of them are, to an extent. Jesse Lee Pearson, definitely so, but Gothix, I don't know. I don't know. And I think we should have a conversation about it as black people in general in the black community, but that's why they're kind of sort of the outcast, the outsider, the rebel in the southern black community, at least, or just the black community in general, because like a UT, it seems like you're serving white people in a sense, or you're basically selling out black people to be in the table with the other white people. Basically, it seems in a sort of political, ideological sense, which in some cases might be true, other cases no, but also extreme online leftist black people. Oh boy, they deserve to be black sheep because some of them are kind of UT. They're unknowingly selling out black people by being very extreme left leaning. And it's just yeesh. Like, ugh.
I'm not going to go over that part of the movie in particular. What I'm going to do is just cover stuff, as I said, that relates to God, because it's an all-encompassing conversation relating to communism, not just how communists use black people in particular, but I think that if you watch this film, it's gonna mess with your head. Definitely it's gonna mess with your head. So
I don't know what that's gonna be for good, though, but we'll see. Yeah, we'll see. Yeah, of course, with every movie or documentary or mixture of both, which I think this is a mixture of both of a movie and documentary, you're gonna trying to bring you in emotionally. So that's, you can say that might be manipulated or propagandistic depending on the usage. That's possible, but also that's just what everybody does. They want you to get in emotionally to kind of be on their side. So maybe not critically think, but that's why it's important to be like, yeah, okay. But how much is this true, though?
Church was the central point. It was the center point of social gathering, culture,
Kind of still
religious
is in the
activity,
South,
everything.
but I get what you
mean. Every Sunday, you woke up, you had breakfast with your mom and dad, and then all of us came out of the house at the same time, and we start walking toward Sunday school. Even if you couldn't sing, you're going to be in the youth choir. And then Wednesday, you would go to youth Bible study. And then the summer, you go to church retreat camp. Those were just expected things.
And especially nowadays, maybe especially a lot of people might be left progressive leaning, might not, or at least forgot why this was such a big deal. It was because of the Negro spiritual. For what I remember, or for what I know of, the sort of African mythology, religious stuff kind of slowly transitioned into Baptist, which is obviously Christian now. But with that, it gave enslaved people hope, faith in something beyond death, because a lot of them, justifiably so, for obvious reasons, really, really longed for death. Others still wanted to live to possibly see them, or at least their children, free at last. And so that's why, the famous slap scene of the sort of atheist black person, I forgot what movie it's called, but most people know it, and she said basically, I don't even believe in God, to her mom, and she was like, in this house, we believe in God. In this house, there is God, because that kind of just helped us survive. I mean, Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., a Christian, Malcolm X, a Muslim, different religion, but the point is a little bit different. That was maybe some of the transition to more known stuff like black atheism, which is a very, very minority, especially in the South, at least. That basically helped us survive. It helped us thrive too spiritually. It gave us something beyond what we just saw. And so with that scene was very powerful back then, maybe still is now, which is why that's why, if you're black in the South, you're most likely you're most likely going to be Christian, or at least going to have the Christian lingo, So, because it was important, because that helped us survive. It wasn't necessarily the only thing, but it was the main thing. So we got to respect that, while also respecting that for some black people, especially left-leaning, they might see that now to an extent as a form of slavery. And also black conservatives see the sort of opposition to that as slavery as well, via the Second Democrat Plantation, as they call it, which we'll most likely get into either in this video or part 2, because it's a lot to talk about. This is going to take 2 parts, maybe even 3, but we'll see how many, because it's important.
Formed the fundamental basis of the black community. It was that sense of right and wrong, it was that sense of morality, it was that sense of discipline that we had.
All right, so what you just saw in that clip was basically talking about how if you went back 50, 60 years ago and you took a look at Black America, it was drastically different than how it is now. And they're framing this around the fact that back then, the Black community was deeply religious. Okay, now this is where a lot of people tend to say, well, you don't need God in order to be a good person. You don't need God in order to have good morals.
You kind of don't, and there was a moral code before the Ten Commandments, because God is the source of morality and goodness, and He is good. So when He commands something, it's good, and it's also good because He commands it. It's both. But, yeesh.
So the first thing is if you are coming up with your own morals, to what standard are...
Which we have done, and we have done in the past, and we're doing it now because that's all we have, because that's just how it works. It's like with the NFL. Objectively, if you do X, Y, and Z, that's a flag. That's a penalty. But subjectively, we've made that into that, but value-wise, in a sense of a way, objectively, that is the rules of the game. Even though we made them, we value them as objective because that's the best thing we have, in a sense. At least in a secular sense, or a non-Christian sense.
Using to say that your morals are actually good, right? How do you know that? And the other thing...
Because usually it checks out. The track record's good because the secularism of it is... The secular morality of it is basically less harm and more positiveness, in a sense. And if it works, don't fix don't fix something that's not broken. Murder is wrong. Because it causes harm, it's wrong, and the track record shows that when we punish this stuff, that's a good thing, because it stops killing people. So that's how you do it. Like, that's basically the only thing you got, in a sense. Is it subjective? Yes, but God subjectively says this is good and bad to an extent, because He has a mind, too. We're made in the image of God. So it's like, God saw light and called it good, subjectively. But objectively, light, in a sense, is good because, well, since He's infinite, when He says stuff, it's more objective than just subjective. But at least for us human beings, when we see something and call it good, that's somewhat subjective, but the value of it's objective because it works. Because it's less harmful and produces positiveness, in a sense.
People might say is, well, I got my morals from my parents. And to that I say, okay, well, who did your parents get their morals from?
From their parents, etc. And maybe depending on your lineage. And it might have been because they believe the pagan god XYZ told them to, possibly. Or they just came in up, they're like, hitting somebody with the rock for no reason is bad. So let's make some type of a boundary, or let's just say that that's bad. Let's tell hitting rocks for no reason bad. And it works. It was observable in a sense. And of course, I think God kind of helped people out. It's like, hey, rocks are, hitting somebody with a rock with no reason might be kind of bad. But they didn't want Him. Until the only one who answered the call was Israel. They're not necessarily special, they're just the ones that answered the call. And they're, in a sense, way special as in God's chosen people, but they're not special as in they're the perfect example of morality. They're just the ones that answered the call. But again, you have moral codes before the Ten Commandments. Your argument doesn't stand. Hey, real quick, if you want to dedicate your life to Christ, aka get saved, or if you're a backslider and want to rededicate your life to Christ, or if you want the baptism of the Holy Spirit with the evidence of speaking with tongues, those prayers are in the description down below.